Every weekday at 6:12 a.m., the driver of the Route 45 starts up their bus, circle checks it, and drives out to Belchertown. It all begins with that sound. But they're not the first. Radio operators have been at the garage since 5:30, assigning each bus to each unit on each route, all the while making sure buses with mechanical issues are kept at the garage for repairs. Even before them, a mechanic has been around checking fluids on every bus since 5 a.m. One after another, drivers arrive at the garage and do the same thing. Start their bus, circle check it, and proceed on to route. Despite the pandemic, things haven't changed that much at UMass Transit Services. Service is pretty similar. Now, of course, face masks are required while riding the bus at all times, and drivers are very careful about not having too many people on the bus at one time. And to make sure of that, there's a clever solution.
We run a plug bus now, as you're aware, which is simply a spare bus sitting on campus waiting to help out if we have an overload situation. That bus can immediately be brought in and used as a spare bus to pick up any overload so that we don't have crush loads of people on the bus breathing on one another and worried about spreading infection. So that's kind of the reason we have it out there.
Yeah. That's Glenn Barrington, General Manager at UMass Transit. He's been manager since 2013, and he brought articulated buses into the fleet, the first in Massachusetts to operate outside of Boston. Normally they only operate during the academic semester, but for the first time ever they ran during the summer. This was an effort to provide more space for social distancing on the buses. He's hoping to get more of them. They've been a great help for passengers ever since their arrival in 2013. But there's a catch.
The challenge of that is that articulated buses are a $1.2 million proposition per unit.
Yeah.
So they're pretty expensive. In good times, in regular, normal times, we would welcome having a couple of more articulated. I'd love to have 6 articulateds at this garage.
Not only are they expensive, but the fleet has new things to deal with. With the world of transportation phasing out of fossil fuels, many transit authorities have transitioned their fleets to compressed natural gas, electric, hydrogen fuel cell, or at the very least, diesel-electric hybrid. 7 of UMass Transit's buses are hybrids. They have a smoother, more modern sound as they go by. But this past summer, 5 new buses arrived, all of them straight diesel. As to why they weren't powered by a renewable energy source? According to Barrington, part of that is the power source itself.
Some of the challenges you face with all-electric vehicles is if, for instance, we had a power outage for 3 or 4 days last week. Remember that storm? You can't have your electricity out for 3 or 4 days if you've got electric buses that you have to charge, or you have no fuel for those vehicles.
Even if the weather were perfectly cooperative all the time, another significant factor is the cost.
You can get like a bus and a half for the cost of one all-electric bus. Yeah. They're fairly expensive. I don't know the exact cost, but they're about $950,000 for an all-electric bus.
A big incentive for using renewable energy fuels is that it is cost-effective in the long run. But of UMass Transit's hybrid buses, 5 of them arrived in 2011, and even after 9 years, they still haven't paid for themselves in fuel savings. Which brings up another significant factor, mileage.
We run about 1 million miles a year in a standard year with the fleet of 35 buses that we get from the PVTA. That's a lot of miles. The range on electric buses wasn't adequate enough to be able to have one electric bus stay on a route from 6 o'clock in the morning until midnight or later on some of the routes that we operate. So they didn't fit the mold for us. Sure. A diesel bus can go upwards of 450 miles before it needs fuel again. That was not the case with an all-electric bus.
1 million miles a year equals about 29,000 miles per bus each year. It may not seem like much, averaging to just about 80 miles a day per bus, but given how long each bus spends in maintenance, that adds up pretty quickly. That bus you heard at the beginning is number 3223, and it reached 400,000 miles just last week, despite having spent 3 months out of commission this year so far. Fortunately, the technology has improved, and UMass Transit placed an order for 1. Taking it in baby steps, as Barrington says. They're coming in next summer with 3 other new buses, and despite everything going on, UMass Transit is still hiring. The incentives are excellent.
Bus driving starts right now at 16 and a quarter, one of the best starting pays on campus for a student job. The hours are very flexible. We can work them around any schedule. We try to be as flexible as we can because we were students once working here at the same time, and so we understand the dynamic of having to have a social life, an academic life, and also make enough money for your expenses as well.
Thanks for listening.